This is Libby Road and the Sound Epistemology Podcast. On this episode of the podcast, Rom returns to help answer questions in the SE 101 room on Clubhouse, which includes a fantastic one-on-one street epistemology conversation with Rom and Evan, who identifies as a Christian mystic. We also get to address some great questions from the audience. I hope you enjoy this episode of the podcast. Let's climb in.
So this is the SE 101 room in a Street Epistemology Club, a room for creating street epistemologists. We are currently going to be taking questions, whoever's interested in learning about street epistemology. And feel free to raise your hands and we'll bring you on stage one at a time to ask your question. If you once your question is answered, we just ask that you bring yourself back down to the stage so that we can bring up the next person to ask a question. Today we have Roman, and I'll pass the mic to him here in a little bit to bring so he can tell us a little bit about himself. So please raise your hands to bring you on stage. If you rather ask your question, if you rather not come on stage, you can actually send me a back channel message, and I'll ask the question on your behalf. That's also another option. So lastly, this room has been created as a learning environment, and it's also being recorded. So keep that in mind. Roman, if you just want to maybe tell the group a little bit about yourself, go ahead.
Yes, gladly. Yes, first, hello everyone, and it's nice seeing so many people in the audience. It's my second time in the clubhouse, in the Street Epistemology Clubhouse. Couple of words about myself is I am the manager of the Russian Street Epistemology community, which has been active since 2017. And I'm also a subject matter expert in the course development project, Street Epistemology, obviously, course development project that's been going on now for more than a year, actually. Yeah, and we are working hard on this, and we're hoping to release the first portion of modules sometime in the coming months. Not a single month, but yeah, plural months. I guess somewhere in the beginning of the next year, but we'll see. And I'm happy to be here and to be able to answer some of your questions. I like any kinds of questions, both basic and challenging ones. And I hope we will make this room not only SC 101, but maybe even 102 and 103 if we can. We'll see.
Excellent. Thank you, Roman. David, if we actually have someone already with the hands raised. David, go ahead.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get the Q&A going. We want to try to answer as many questions as we can. It's good to see everybody. It's good to be back, and glad Rom is back for more. So yeah, let's go ahead. Hey Bishop, how's it going? Good to see you.
It's going well. Hey, we had a conversation a couple days ago about some critique of street epistemology, and I want to share some of the questions we had for you today. One is, I've heard street epistemology described as a conversation. Would you say it is a conversation, or is it more of a interrogation in conversational form?
Oh, awesome question right away. Thank you, Bishop. Well, when it comes to definitions, I'm always a bit hesitant because we can define anything, using whatever we want, right? Like we create those words and give them meaning. But I look at street epistemology as several things at the same time, actually. One is I look at it as a conversational tool or set of tools, you can say, a tool set that we can use and apply to improve our conversations. And actually we can apply it when we're talking to other people, and also when we're thinking to ourselves as well, because we can conduct conversation with ourselves. Yeah, so I don't think I look at street epistemology as an interrogation tool, but I'm not sure. I'm not an English native speaker, so but to me the word interrogation sounds a bit harsher than than what I imagine when I'm thinking about street epistemology. But maybe it's just me. Maybe.
I can differentiate the
Yeah.
two terms if that would help.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
So a conversation means both people have skin in the game. Both people are sharing ideas and asking questions, and it's a 50-50 thing. Interrogation means there's only one person that's really sharing their thoughts. The other person is asking questions to get at the root of it. So between those two definitions, would you say it's more of a conversation or more of an interrogation in the format of a conversation?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for clarification. I would say that
Can I add one option, Roman? Perhaps interview?
Sure. Oh, interview. Yeah, sure. But we can talk about any specific word if we want. So, speaking about those interrogation and conversation that Bishop just mentioned, I would say it could be both. We can definitely be invested to a similar degree. Like we could both interlocutors could share what they have. They could take turns. In epistemology, we usually do it in a somewhat asymmetrical manner. That's why it might be also an interrogation. For example, one person interrogates another person, and then who knows? Maybe the person being interrogated doesn't want to interrogate back. We usually offer this opportunity, of course, but maybe they just don't want to, and maybe it would remain a one-sided questioning type of conversation, or as you can say, interrogation. So it depends on the situation, it depends on what people want, I think, and what their goals are. Could be both. If I've answered your question. If not, clarify please more.
No, I think that I'll tell you. I'm going to tell you the root of the question why it came up. When I was first told SE, I was told SE as a conversation to help people delve into why they believe what they believe. And from the actual practical examples I've seen of SE, it doesn't seem to be that. In that one person is interrogating what the person believes, the person doing the interrogating is in no way putting any skin in the game as far as putting their beliefs up for debate. It seems to be more of a way to get at the root base of someone else's beliefs as a way to get them to question them. And I think the most this charitable way I can describe it is that it's a sneaky way to tell us when you're having a conversation, but actually get them to question their beliefs. And that was something that we actually debated for quite a while in a room about that, because I definitely see the utility of a tool like this, but it also seems like in some ways it's being used in a disingenuous way.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a pretty common criticism. I think it's fair because different people can try to use the SE toolset however they want. Personally, I would definitely suggest for both interlocutors to have their skin in the game. For example, if I'm an interrogator, let's say, if I'm a questioner, more or less, I still want to think about my own belief, and I still every question that I'm giving my interlocutor, I ask myself as well. And if I don't know the answer, or if I don't want to answer it, too bad for me. Like it would be a sign that something's not right with my own beliefs. And also, of course, if I'm questioning someone, I should be totally ready and open to be questioned in a similar manner or in other kind of manner. So yeah.
I appreciate saying that. I feel the same way. I think it should be a little bit more open in the ways I've seen it. But to your point, if the person you're interrogating has no questions for you, then what are you supposed to do? One last critique I want to point out is that street epistemology feels a lot like the Socratic method, just kind of rebranded and repackaged. So I'm curious, in your perspective, how does SE differentiate from the Socratic method?
Yeah, another good question. So SE is actually very similar to Socratic questioning, but there are several things to mention here. I think first, what is now being called by Socratic questioning or Socratic conversation is a very kind of a vague and broad thing, a broad concept. I have specifically Googled and looked searched for some studies and science that is speaking about Socratic questioning, and I found different results. Like basically any questioning technique could be sometimes called Socratic questioning, or sometimes some specific questioning could be called Socratic questioning. So depending on the situation, yeah, just keep that in mind that sometimes when we talk about Socratic something, we could be thinking about different things. But if we're talking about Socrates himself, or as Plato described him, at least depicted, I mean, then it is somewhat similar, of course, what he was doing to Street Epistemology. But the significant differences that I see would probably be that one could argue that Socrates thought that he knew the actual truth of the matter, like the right answer, and he kind of led his interlocutor to quote unquote see this truth. At least it could be argued. And also, another difference could be that Socrates didn't know anything about cognitive biases, didn't know about the modern scientific method, falsification principle, a lot of stuff from modern psychology, right, that we now know and can use and apply, at least discuss it and adjust for it. So, yeah, but having said all that, it is in a lot of ways similar. As Anthony likes to say, Street Epistemology could be seen as an offshoot of a Socratic method.
Cool. I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop, very much. And if you guys have something else to share about this, David, yeah, go ahead.
On the interrogation versus conversation part, I think it's important to remember that that both parties need to consent. An interrogation, that seems like there's less consent happening during that, whereas a conversation, both interlocutors are consenting to having the conversation. So that would be one distinction that I would make. Also, with the Socratic method, last week we had Tanya, which I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe she teaches philosophy, and she kind of brought that question up, and there's going to be a recording of that conversation. I think if you're interested in hearing a perspective from a person that teaches philosophy, I would recommend hearing that back and forth. Probably get a lot of insight from that. And there are some street epistemologists that use street epistemology and Socratic examination interchangeably. So yeah, thanks for the question. Looks like we have Evan. Welcome, Evan.
Thank you. I had never heard of street epistemology until on Clubhouse this week, and just from the question so far, I'm already really intrigued. And well, so there were two things that came to mind. Even though I don't have a clear question, I hope that's okay. But I just want to hear your guys' thoughts. there's someone on YouTube named Ray Comfort who is a evangelist for Christianity. He has high pressure, kind of like in your face interrogation, I guess you might say, tactics, and I'm sort of fascinated by that interchange because I see lots of logical problems in his reasoning, but I also see him touching on matters close to the human heart, and that's one thing. I don't know if you guys have heard of him. The other thing is, I would love to, like, I appreciated what Bishop said about it potentially being disingenuous, and I thought, well, in this context, the cards are on the table, and so I have a sense of like, okay, so this is maybe helping people question their religious belief, and I'd love to be sort of a guinea pig. If it's appropriate in this context, I don't know if it is or not. Now that I know that that's sort of the intent. So anyway, that's respond however you like.
Yeah, thank you, Evan. I don't think I have heard of the person from YouTube that you mentioned, so I unfortunately can't speak to that. And about what Bishop mentioned, and David has already said about consent, I just want to second that. It's very important. And when we are talking about street epistemology, we're always thinking about consent, and not only that, but informed consent. Whenever we're saying consent, we mean informed consent, which means that sharing the information, all the necessary information should be shared between interlocutors that they feel like they need in order to proceed comfortably. And so to just understand why they are doing it, and where are they getting at, and stuff like that, to
I love that.
a degree that's comfortable to both of them.
I love
Very
that.
important.
So if I was to name the why that I'm aware of behind the couple of, it'd be a couple of things. And some of them are just coming to me right now, but one would be a sincere interest in questioning my beliefs for the purpose of some newfound awakening. And I'm a little bit hesitant around that as well, because I recognize the important role that anyone, including my own beliefs, play in sort of organizing my experience in my life so that it functions. Having had a shift in worldview in the past, I know that it could at least temporarily not function very well. And then another motive, I suppose, would be to sort of like put to the test sort of the rationalistic approach, and see the limits of it. And because in my mind, I sort of have, like an argument, let's say, that seems impenetrable to a rationalistic based doubt project, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Sounds totally sensible to me. Yeah, that's exactly very close to what we usually mean by street epistemology conversation. So basically, in a couple of words, what we want to do is have a friendly environment where both interlocutors are willing and able to share something about their beliefs, or at least one of them is sharing, another one is helping explore the belief. And so, yeah, one thing that we want to concentrate on is this whole rapport consent environment. This is crucial. Without it, we just don't go anywhere. But given that, we want to just examine and test and challenge anything that we would like to challenge in the belief formation process, in order to improve ourselves, of course, in order to have less incorrect beliefs, in order to make our methods that we use for coming to conclusions more reliable.
That's great.
The gist of it.
Yeah, thanks for responding. So I don't know like how long this room is meant for, or if you do if you practice it in here, or if it's more a question, more of a meta about theory of. But I'm just putting myself out there as game for whatever you like, and I'm also game to just let the next person ask a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. So David will speak to that. Yeah, go ahead, David.
Yeah, I was just going to say, as long as we don't have a long line of people wanting to come up and ask questions, and if Rom is up for it, you mentioned Evan maybe wanting to be a guinea pig. If you guys want to have a one-on-one as like a demonstration, yeah, as we don't have a bunch of people waiting to ask questions, I guess, because sometimes it can get a little bit lengthy, depending on what the subject is. So it's absolutely appropriate to do that if both of you consent to it.
Yeah, awesome. I just want to say that yeah, I'm game totally. I'll be happy to answer all the questions, but also alternatively, I would be happy to question even, or also I would be willing to be a guinea pig and explore my own beliefs and have someone else question me, because yeah, this is also totally that I love to do, because when my beliefs are being explored by someone else, I can oftentimes see more, I don't know, things that I could be blindsided for. I don't know, just yeah, it helps.
Beautiful.
Let's check in with Early real quick, and see if there's any questions that are wanting to be asked before we get into it, and then
Yeah,
maybe do a quick reminder of what the room is, and
yeah,
then we can
exactly.
get into that. Does that work?
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's actually what I wanted to do as well. Just want to do just a very quick reset for the new people in the room. So this is the Street Epistemology 101 room in the Street Epistemology Club. If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hands and we'll bring you up on stage. We're currently doing one-on-one. So once you come on stage and your questions have been answered, we just ask that you bring yourself back down to the audience. And so the next person, we can bring the next person up. If you do not want to come on stage, feel free to send me a back channel message, and I can ask you, your question on your behalf if you want to do it that way as well. Also, keep in mind that the room is being recorded. We are currently about to witness one SC examination, which I'm glad to see. So, yeah, Roman and Evan, if you guys do wanna go ahead with that, go ahead.
Sure. Right now, so does it mean that we don't have any questions, or do we postpone the questions before we conclude the conversation?
David, I don't know. I'm not sure how you want to do it. I do have one hand raised. I just did get one hand raised. So,
And I'd be happy to step down for a question.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do the one-on-one, and then we just have one question in the
uh,
audience right now. Is that correct?
correct. Yeah, just one person.
Okay, we're here already. Let's go ahead and do the one-on-one, and then we'll get to the next person right after that.
All right, awesome.
Cool, fun.
So,
Thank you.
Evan, you said you wanted to be a guinea pig, right? Or do you want to question me? Oh.
I would love to be the guinea pig, largely because I was drawn to it, and I basically know nothing about street epistemology.
All right. I hope I can show you at least some of it. Yeah, sure. Do you have something particular in mind that you want to talk about? Some belief of yours to explore?
Yeah, I was thinking just in terms of my belief in God and my belief, which isn't, I admit, is not very well articulated or well formed. I resonate with kind of the label of mysticism or being a mystic, and I sometimes I almost want to create an acronym for God or whatever you want to call it, because I hear people say that all the time. I don't think it makes a very good acronym though, or whatever you want to call it. But it's kind of like a general sense of there is something more than meets the eye. There is intelligence in the universe that is kind of pervasive. And there's insights that have come to me, like after meditating or something, like it's coming out of meditation. It's like, whoa, the nature of the universe is love, which is kind of a particular thing. And so there's this sense of the ultimate goodness of life. There's a sense of an affirmation of life that there's a sense in myself of trust that is kind of beyond what it used to be for me, which was more based on a conscripted belief system that was more traditional Christian. And it was in the losing of that I believe that made the way for something new to emerge that was more based on my own personal direct experience and a sense of connection with everything, especially in certain moments. I'll leave it at that for now.
Yeah, awesome. That sounds beautiful, actually. Why would you want this question challenged? I'm just kidding, of
Yeah.
course.
Thank you.
I mean, we don't have to, of course, challenge it. We can just explore it. And challenge or not, it depends on the situation. But yeah, it's like let me just check with you and see if I understand what you're talking about. So you see that there is this whole beautiful universe that we live in, and given all its awesomeness and beauty, you feel like there's something more to it than just matter, or whatever I might call it, like something, as I said, that doesn't meet the eye. So some inner beauty that maybe is behind the scenes or something like that, and you find this thought, I guess, thrilling and important. And that kind of, I would even guess that helps you go on with your life. Would that be somewhere close?
Yeah, I love describing that, because you're catching a lot of the ethos of it, and you're recognizing, acknowledging that it is not. It's more about the ethos of it, in a sense. It's more about the attitude, and there's also, I guess I would add, there's a sense of devotion, and I know that I found that is sort of a stumbling block for some people that I talk to about it, who's like, oh no, I'm not into submission or anything like that. And devotion, I suppose, has a sort of flavor of submission, but for me, it's more like, I am so grateful for my life, and I want to live it to the fullest in service to the whole, whatever that is. The whole, which I feel, in a sense, guided by, although I even hesitate to say that the whole is guiding me. I like to use the word God to describe sort of the ultimate. And so God really is, in a sense, metaphorically at least, the author of everything. So that would be good and evil. And that's heretical from my former belief system. But speaking of which, there's a dimension of my faith, let's call it, that is that does have a sort of Christian wardrobe to it. Like, so I was raised Christian, and so I have all these scriptures in my mind, and I'm still connected to Christian community and church and things like that. And I find a lot of meaning in the scriptures that I did before, but now it's in a much more mysterious and open way. And I see and embrace like metaphors of or patterns of transformation that I see in Christianity, like death and resurrection and new life or being born again. It's kind of like when I lost my faith is when I was born again. So it's sort of like not according to the textbook. But I just wanted to add that dimension to it, because I do identify as a Christian mystic.
All right, awesome. It sounds to me like it's this whole concept and belief that we're exploring now is highly emotional to you, right? Would that be correct to say? You feel a lot of it. Maybe it is even more so about feelings than it is about how you think the world works or something. Would that be correct to say?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, it's very interesting because I'm such a cerebral personality type, and it's been through sort of the healing and reconnection of with my body and my feelings through life and through breakdown and through questioning my belief system and having it kind of go out the door and becoming. I basically identified as an atheist for like a brief moment, and so yeah, I'm it's it's very interesting because I guess what it is more founded not in it's not founded in reason, it's interpreted by reason, if that makes sense. So it's really founded in my experience of life and what I and what still kind of proves to work well for me in terms of connecting with others, in terms of like maybe following a spiritual teacher or receiving certain kinds of guidance that I can check out and say, hey, look at this. And also definitely through meditation and my experience of subtle energy, which um, whatever that subtle energy is, I definitely experience it. And whether it can be explained in terms of material phenomena, it doesn't really matter to me so much. The way I kind of look at it is, and again, this is sort of a philosophical interpretation, right? So there are a lot of like beliefs and rational kind of approaches and interpretive frameworks that I'm using. But I guess I resonate, for example, with the idea that consciousness is fundamental in our reality, and I don't know if that's the case, but it's possible that I will move towards a place where I could speak that with greater conviction or a sense of knowledge, but that might not be one that I can necessarily convince someone through argument. I'll stop there.
It's interesting. Yeah, interesting that you mentioned convince someone in an argument. I was thinking in similar terms, I think, to myself, whether there is something to convince someone about. And let me try to unpack this a little bit more. So let's imagine another person who says that they don't think there is something else, like something that doesn't meet the eye, in a sense that there is some metaphysical part of the universe, or that there is something beyond what is, I don't know, what comprises all the matter. But let's say we can even call them an atheist for short. But let's say they are actually, being an atheist, they are in awe of how the universe works. They meditate. They even think that consciousness is fundamental, not unlike you do yourself. And yeah, and they just say, I don't think there's something beyond. I don't believe in metaphysical part of the universe, but I just don't need it, and I love my life. I love how I think about it, how I feel about it, and I honestly feel this awe when I'm looking at the universe. So my question to you, Evan, would be: do you think there is something significant that's different between how you think and how they think? Like, is there something that one of you might be less correct about than the other
that's
one?
such a great question. Yeah. The way you describe this person, this hypothetical person, I would fundamentally say no, that there's not an important difference. It's, to me, it's kind of like, it's more like the question of like, what do I want for myself? What do I want for others? Because I care for their well-being, or I care for, but I appreciate the inquiry because I feel like there are finer distinctions possible. It's like, what is, it's kind of like, what is the practical significance of this conversation? If what's the practical significance of believing a certain way and not another? And it's kind of like, I can come across closed-minded, unhappy, irritable, sort of antagonistic people that are very tied to their beliefs and maybe judgmental or critical of others, and maybe are even attached to the others changing their beliefs, completely irrespective of which side of the, theism, atheism debate they're on. And so,
Right.
it's like two sides of the same coin. I feel more of a sense of kinship in a way with, I guess, people who have opened their minds a little bit more, and which I don't just have this picture kind of like, as you open your mind, if you keep opening, it might allow you to open your heart, and as you keep opening, it might allow you to open to deeper dimensions of your even just your physical being, to live in, I don't know, with greater essence and beauty and love and lots of big highfalutin concepts, but there's something about when you come across someone who is really just being themselves. It's like, how do you not be yourself? I mean, that sounds ridiculous, right? But I guess I have this belief in development or evolution or something that brings out sort of the essence in things and in people, and that's sort of what I'm most interested in celebrating and drawing out and contributing toward the expression of, more so than the belief system.
Yeah. Celebrating, I love that word. Yeah, celebrating life, celebrating the connection between people and all the good that we have and can achieve. That's an awesome way to looking at it. I like it. Yeah, and I don't know. I think I understand at least partially what you're saying, and yeah, I kind of like it. So I'm not sure I have any more questions to you about this matter. I to be honest, I don't see what's to challenge here in epistemological sense, and yeah, so that's why I don't feel the drive to do it. But I want to ask you whether you would like to ask me some questions about it, maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, like getting into more specifics of one way to do this, to make further ground in what you're describing. I'm not trying to make a problem out of it, because I think it's a really beautiful thing. We're both here celebrating life together. But like, if I was to talk about specific experiences or like things I've interpreted, or I don't know, it's an interesting question. It's like a general question, I suppose, is like, at what point does the belief become necessary because the lack of belief or the presence of a different, maybe more limiting belief in some way, is actually limiting your experience? So it's like, I feel like there's a lot of science and insight about how our beliefs function in terms of our experience of the world and in terms of what we're able to see and perceive. And so my interest, I suppose, so let me see if I can ask you a question. I guess it would be, so I experience your questioning as very sort of affirming and open-ended, or what am I trying to say? It's affirming and just positive, I guess. Like you said, you don't feel like there's something to dismantle. And I probably, because I've made it difficult, because I don't have like, hey, this is the way it is, and
to be honest, I don't think you made it difficult.
Okay.
And if you want, I can try to unpack what I think about it, and maybe it will answer your question
Yeah.
that you didn't finish. But if you have a specific question finished in mind, yeah,
No,
then
if
go
you
ahead.
have
But if not,
thoughts, go ahead, because
yeah, I have
I'm just
thoughts.
trying to find.
So here's how I look at these things. One aspect of life that I'm looking at separately is feelings, emotions, our let's say psychological models of the world, which is different from epistemological models of the world. For example, if we say, I like to celebrate life, I think there is more to life than what meets the eye. But if you ask me, then, well, if someone doesn't think that there is more to life than what meets the eye, would you say they are wrong? And I would say, no, it's not what I mean. It's just how I feel about it. Like it's just for me. I feel I like thinking about it this way, and I'm not saying someone who doesn't think this specific way is wrong. So this is more about my psychology, psychological models, and my feelings, emotions, this aspect. And another aspect that I separately look at is what I think about the physical world, about the reality. And here, for example, I could say GMO products are not more harmful than regular or organic products. And here, if you ask me, would I say that someone who disagrees with it is wrong? I would say yes. I do actually think they're wrong, and it's testable. We can actually conduct an experiment, an observation, and we can distinguish between two possible worlds where in one, GMOs do actually hurt our health, for example, and in another world they don't. And or there could be levels to it, of course, but we can just actually see where we are, how our world works in this manner. So this second part is more about epistemology, and I find it very useful for myself to distinguish between those two parts, at least. One about how I perceive myself and how I like to feel and think about how I feel, and another one is my actual beliefs about the physical reality. What do you think about that?
Oh, I like the distinction because, well, I mean, I once read something that Richard Rohr said. He's a Franciscan priest. He said that religion is more about, I can't remember actually which word he used, but he said maybe science is more about truth, and religion is more about love or something. I can't remember. And it was just kind of like a little bit of a simplistic way of putting it, but I resonated with it in that, I mean, for me, science became much less of a problem for my faith when I let go of my belief system, my theological belief system, that previously may have conflicted in various ways with science. And so I hear what you're saying then, I think, is that basically when you're talking about knowledge or like epistemology knowledge, that
Yeah, sure.
science is kind of the go-to for when it comes to knowledge, and that I guess and then on the psychological side, it's more of like a sort of subjective experience and how you relate to that in your life, and less so
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
about knowledge per se.
Right, and subjective experience is also very important. It's also a crucial part of our lives, and I think we all have it. So yeah, I think both are important.
Yeah, that's interesting because I've also heard there's sort of this idea of inner science. There's a spiritual teacher who I have studied quite a bit. He's like a modern mystic, like Thomas Hubel, and he talks about his organization is called the Academy of Inner Science. Well, he kind of talks about outer science being, science, what we talk as science, and then inner science meaning the study of the subjective experience. which, I mean, I think to many might sound like a misuse of the word science, but, or maybe of the word knowledge, but it seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, personally, I would say that I don't mind that as long as we know how to distinguish the different aspects of the world that we're looking at. If we say inner science or outer science, I wouldn't mind that. Well, like as long as we just understand what we're talking about, any definitions will do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, cool. It feels like we're searching a empty room for more nuggets to talk about, and they're probably there. But this has been wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank
If
you
you
very
have more
much, and
questions, I'm
I
welcome.
enjoyed it.
Welcome them.
Yeah, I don't think I have more questions from the top of my head. I think it's been a pretty productive conversation, actually, and yeah, I like that. I just hope that the audience also felt it was somewhat useful and interesting. But it seems like to us, to both of us, it was pretty good.
Yeah,
So
we're
thank
loving
you.
it. Whatever anyone else
Yeah.
thinks. Yeah, thank you.
No,
Appreciate it.
Yeah, let's
I
agree
thought
on
it was
that.
a great.
Awesome.
Yeah, that was beautiful. I think we could probably go on and on. Evan, if you want to stick around, um, we can possibly continue after we get a couple of other people up. So yeah, if you want to stick around, we can continue it later.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here. We try to do this room every Saturday around this time. So if you're into this, just put it on your calendar and come hang out again.
Nice. Thank you. It's been great. Appreciate your hospitality.
Awesome. Thank you, Evan, for your participation, and I'm glad we had a chance to witness that myself and for the audience as well. I have a question from the audience. I'm actually going to bring up the next speaker up, but I am going to ask a question from the audience, and we can answer that real quick, and then we'll go to Heron. Heron, that's also I need to ask a question. Heron, so I'll pass the mic to you here shortly. Okay. So the question from the audience. Okay. What responsibility do self-identified street epistemologists have in calling out bad forms of SE when they see it?
Ooh, very good question. So yeah, in my understanding, this question was not from Heron. So I answered this question, or we answered this question, and then we
If
heard
you,
another question from Heron.
it's no, this is not from Heron. It's from
Yeah,
the audience. So if you want to answer that, and then we'll go to Heron.
sure. Yeah, let's do that. Yeah, actually, this relates to one of our recent discussions among the course development team, which relates to the ethical code of street epistemology. And yeah, actually, Mark Solomon was the one who brought it up, referring the psychotherapist ethical code that exists. And we were mostly thinking about it in terms of ethical code for a person that they assigned for themselves, not as much as what's our responsibility to do when we see other people, say, misrepresenting street epistemology, right? So those are two, I think, different aspects of ethical considerations, among other ethical considerations, obviously. And yeah, I don't know, like the first one, that the ethical considerations that we have to assign to ourselves is vital. I think it's totally something we want to have, and we will write more about it. But when we see other people misperform, let's say, or do something that we don't perceive as street epistemology, right, and they call it street epistemology, well, I'm not sure we're responsible to do anything about it, actually, because anyone can do whatever they want. All we can do is just try to clarify what we mean by street epistemology, but and what we suggest doing, what ethical considerations we are suggesting to the highest degree to adopt. But other than that, I don't know, who are we to judge other people doing whatever they want, even if we don't like it? So yeah, I'm not sure there should be some responsibility assigned to street epistemologists in that manner.
Couldn't we use SE to examine each other's use and form?
Sure. Yeah, I think that's what we do oftentimes, actually. We use SC to explore each other's beliefs. Does it relate to the question? Or maybe just missed something.
Well, no, I guess if we notice that we think somebody else is using it incorrectly, one approach that we could maybe take is to use SE itself to examine that.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, we could do lots of stuff. We could try talking to them. We could try talking to their audience, to their interlocutors. We could try to talk amongst ourselves and try to make definitions more clear. Yeah, I didn't mean to say that we should just sit and do nothing. Absolutely, it would depend on the situation and our current goals. Yeah, what I meant to say is that I'm not sure there is a universal answer to this, and there should be some universal code in place what to do in a situation like this. Like, yeah, no one should be obliged to talk to the person who we think is misrepresenting SC. I think maybe they are doing quite well actually, and it's us who thinks they're misrepresenting it, or yeah, maybe they
I guess
have.
that's kind of where I was going, just having that conversation about it, and maybe there's something that I could learn that I could be doing better based on their approach. And one way of arriving at that would be to kind of use street epistemology with each other.
Yeah, that's a great point. I was thinking about a different context. I'll tell you in a minute. But yeah, as you say, when we see other person perform a conversation in somewhat of a manner that we don't feel like it's street epistemology, but it might also be viable. I want to learn from it. I want to see how it goes, what it achieves, and how both interlocutors feel in this situation. So definitely, yes, we want to learn constantly. But what I was thinking was actually a situation where someone is, let's say, emotionally hurting their interlocutor. Maybe they're yelling at them, like they're saying, "Who are you to not answer my questions? Tell me quickly, how confident are you that this belief is the case?" And they say, "I don't want to talk to you," and they say, "Well, this is street epistemology, bitch, and you should answer my questions." Like, I was thinking about cases like this. So when they uh, saying that they're using street epistemology, but they're actually being, I don't know, disrespectful or dishonest, obviously, or misbehaving in some other manner.
Yeah, I
But
think we're
yeah,
on the same page. Yeah,
yeah,
thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, so just do a quick reset now and pass the mic to Heron. Um, just for anyone new in the audience, we're currently taking questions from anyone in the audience. So if you one at a time. So if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hands and we'll bring you up. We just ask that you bring yourself back down to the audience once your question has been answered. Or you can send a back channel message to me and I'll ask the question on your behalf. Yeah, and also keep in mind that this room is being recorded. With that, Heron, if you want to go ahead and ask your question, floor is yours.
yes. Hello, Heron.
Thanks, guys.
Hey, Heron, good to see you again.
Yeah, good.
Welcome back.
Yeah, well, I love the work you guys are doing. But I wanted to ask you guys some questions about your beliefs, and I'm curious if you want to do this one-on-one, or just have me throw a general question out, or how you want to do this.
Well, I guess me being a guest here, I would answer your question first,
Okay.
and
All right.
then we can.
Well,
Then I can
Roman,
answer.
and I like everything I've heard you say. Your attitude
Thank
is
you.
pretty much in alignment with my own. But I still have some problem with the word belief itself. And I'm curious, do you have any beliefs?
Oh yeah. So the way that we're usually using the word belief in street epistemology is just, for lack of a better word, but we usually use interchangeably several different words. Actually, belief is one of them. Claim is another one. One could also say statement, I guess, or what was the another one? I think there was another one. But yeah, I think you get the idea. So we could say claim instead of belief. It wouldn't make difference in this sense. So when we're saying belief, we're not attributing a specific kind of believing, I guess. So just for the lack of a better word, if you
Yeah.
come up with better word, it would be nice. So
Well,
yeah, I have lots of beliefs. I like anything basically that I think is true is my belief. That's how I use
but
this word.
is true. I mean, that's sort of the heart of the issue, because for me, I try to operate on what I call conscious assumptions, and I assume responsibility for having made those assumptions. I assume the sun will come up tomorrow. It may not,
Yes.
but
Yes.
it's a safe bet, it seems to me. But I don't
Right.
believe that the sun will come up tomorrow. To me, it's really just a distinction. The use of that word bugs me because of the way, well, primarily the way religionists use that word, believe. It really implies for them some sort of knowledge that I don't
Hmm.
is justified. So I just don't like the word believe for anybody. I prefer to operate on conscious assumptions. So I guess I'm just curious how you respond to that.
Oh, I actually love that. I like your approach, and yeah, like speaking philosophically serious, I would also say that I don't think there is such a thing as truth, or we could even say absolute truth or knowledge, like some in a strong meaning of
Yeah,
this word. So yeah, definitely. If you, if you would ask me, like for a more defensible position that I have, I would also be using words like you said, conscious assumption. I allow it. I also like to use words like expectations. I expect this to happen to
yeah,
this level of
yeah,
confidence. Like I'm 99.99% confident that the sun will come up
yeah.
tomorrow.
It's a good bet.
It's never 100. Right. So yeah. So
Well,
I
so
like
then,
it.
okay. Well, so the question I had for you is: do you have any beliefs, or do you operate on conscious assumptions?
Conscious assumptions only. Yes,
Okay.
I'm a Bayesian thinker, if you know what I mean. I don't believe in confidence, 0% or
Yeah.
100% confidence. Yeah, I always try to ask myself how confident I am, and it's always somewhere in between, never 100, never
Yeah.
0. And also, I can ask myself what could shift my confidence in either direction, actually. And I have to know the answers to those questions too. If I don't even understand what the answers to those questions
Yeah.
are, then I might think that something is probably not reliable in my way of thinking.
Well, then in that case, I don't think we have anything more to talk about.
But yeah, thank you very much. It's an interesting subject, and I think it's important. It also comes up pretty naturally in these kinds of discussions between, because some people just use those words like truth, knowledge, and they don't mean it in an absolute sense, or they don't even think in such terms, right? So for me, I would just say that I don't mind using those words as long as people uh, mm, don't let's say agree on the understanding of those words. They
Yeah.
don't imply something hidden or something
Yeah.
too absolute about it. yeah, as long as you don't do that, I don't mind whatever words you're using, truth, knowledge, whatever. But yeah, speaking more seriously, of course, conscious assumptions or expectations would be a nicer way of
Okay.
phrasing it.
Yeah. All right. Well, then, like I say, we're completely in accord here, and like I say, I'll go back down to the audience.
Awesome, but thanks for bringing this up, Aaron. I think
Thank
it's an
you.
important
Yeah.
subject.
Yeah, Heron, if Heron runs some really interesting rooms here on Clubhouse. If you're on Clubhouse often, and you haven't been to one of his rooms, I definitely recommend it. It's always a fascinating conversation, and actually, Heron was one of our first guests in our old room, and it was a great room. I've had the privilege of having a one-on-one with Heron also, and I hope to do more. And some of the things that I've learned from Heron is choosing the right words. Um, I use words like the a lot less.
Oh,
Um,
good. Thank you, David. All right.
I just because of the implications that it comes with, and basically just that understanding of how language really guides us, for better or for worse. And also, on the subject of the word belief, I'm using that word a lot less now too, and I'm using words like conclusion or assumption a lot more instead. So yeah, I highly recommend people following Heron and joining his rooms. It's they're really fun.
Thanks,
I
David.
appreciate
Thank you.
Let me
yeah
just say that the room or the club is called Gendo Tactical Language. And since this is my obsession in life, I'm always available to talk about this stuff. And all the information is in my profile here. And there's a link tree document in there that gives you all the URLs as active links. So, and I'm always available. So thanks you guys for your work. I really love what you're doing and support it. And I'll be back another time probably.
Awesome. Awesome. Actually, after David's introduction of Heron, I started appreciating Heron even more because I also think these matters are very important, highly important. As David interestingly put it, as where language guides us. And interestingly, I think about it quite a lot too, like how language guides us. Language is the only thing that we can use to, well, or maybe the best thing we can use to translate our thoughts into and to discuss things. But actually, it's oftentimes happening that language actually guides us. Like, for example, if a person thinks too seriously about words truth or belief, like, is it actually true or is it not true? And they are starting to think, for example, in binary terms, and they just don't have even, maybe they don't have a language to have level to assign levels to it, or maybe they just, I don't know, letting the language guide them literally. But I actually think it should be the other way around. Yes, language
Roman,
guides us to some degree, but
yeah,
we
Roman,
should be the ones who are guiding the language on the other
yes,
way around.
yeah. Language uses us more than we use it, and I would like to invite
Yeah,
you to my room anytime. I'd love to have a good one-on-one with you sometime, Roman. Good work. Thanks a lot.
awesome. Thank you to Harry.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, Henry. Yeah, we don't have any questions as it is right now, David.
yeah. I was
But
hoping. Go ahead. Sorry.
uh, I was just gonna make a comment about a question that was asked earlier, and actually, I did get a short question in the back channel.
Awesome.
So just real quick, Roman, um, what is Christian mystic? What is the definition of Christian mystic? I am curious about that answer myself as well.
Well, I have no idea. I would say Christian mystic is a concept that I don't use in my everyday life, so I'm not sure I should be the one who defines it. But as I said, I would be okay with any kind of definition as long as we understand what we're talking about. So when you say Christian mystic, I don't know what you're talking about. I would assume that a person is Christian with all the implications, right? But even that, I am totally open to rethinking because, for example, as Ivan was saying, he might not be the ordinary Christian that you might encounter. So I have no problem with people using words like this or other words as long as they don't misguide us, as long as we don't let the words guide us instead of what should be going on is the other way around. Like we are using the words and we should be asking ourselves what we mean by those words. Where do we want to go? We might first think, and then we should assign words to it. We might assign already existing words. Sometimes we want to think of new words to describe something interesting. And it's tough actually because we are confined.
I've got an idea. Well, first, um, I have a. Hang on, I need to go on mute for a second.
Okay. Am I audible, guys? Because my audio crashed.
You sound good, Roman. If,
Okay.
I think overall you think you sound good. I'll ask a question or make a comment real quick after since David is gone for now. I was just gonna make a comment about the earlier question in regards to the word that we're using for this for SE. I have found there was a lot of pushback to this word conversation, and and I think it took me a little while, but I finally really understood what the objection was. Um, I have been watching SE videos for so long, a long while. Reed down in the audience and Anthony, and there's a certain impression that I've had so far of what SE is. And every time I heard somebody critique the word conversation, I always thought about those videos I've watched, not realizing that people were thinking something completely different than what I thought. And
Yeah.
so last weekend I did realize, and I think Bishop did a good job of like explaining what that was earlier. Um, and so I do like that third option that Alfonso said when he said uh, an interview, which I think it's actually the way Anthony presents it often is I'm just asking people some questions about their beliefs. I think it's kind of like how this intro kind of goes. And the people usually are willing to be questioned. They kind of say, okay, I'm willing to go through this process. And so I think, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's been interesting to hear the reaction from people that hear it described versus what I've seen myself when I watch the videos. And it's been different. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah,
I also like the word interview, by the way.
yeah, I think it's more fitting.
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess
David,
so.
it goes back. It goes back to consent again. Nobody is, or at least from my understanding of what street epistemology is nobody's forcing anybody to question their beliefs. It's they need to get that informed consent and check in once in a while and make sure that consent is still there, uh, throughout the conversation, if it's appropriate. So, um, yeah, sorry about a second ago. I had to go on mute because I had a small crowd of people walking by. So I was going to suggest, and I was hoping that Bishop was still here so that he could maybe comment on the one-on-one that Rom and Evan had. It looks like he's gone. Maybe he'll be back. So the question, and maybe we don't need to go too deep into it, but the question about Christian mysticism, um, I I have a little bit of understanding about that, and that's basically um, somebody who doesn't necessarily believe in things like the resurrection, but they are more attached to the ideas that brings up. But my idea was to maybe have, unless we have a long line, maybe have Evan come back. From what I heard, it sounds like Evan could maybe help answer that question as well, if they're willing to come back on stage. What do you guys think about that?
I think Evan would be the best actually person to answer the question about Christian mysticism, because if I remember correctly, he said something about it. Yeah, himself.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you,
yeah.
Dan. Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to riff on it. And I can sort of speak what it means for me personally, and then maybe recognize that it could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Like the example, David, that you just had about belief in the resurrection. I think among people that might describe themselves as Christian mystics, you would find a big variety. So it's a little hard to pin down in that regard. For me, it was funny when I just joined Clubhouse a little while ago, and I was putting my bio together and everything, and I changed back a couple times and forth between like modern mystic or mystic and Christian mystic. And
now you can say epistemological mystic if you want.
yes, yes, indeed. So the Christian aspect, the reason I include that, I was just thinking about that a little bit. I didn't know what I was going to say in case you invited me up, but then the part that kind of seems most alive to me is that through Christianity, because of my upbringing, I find a connection to my heart. So it's through the words of Scripture, it's through an early childhood devotion to Jesus. And that's pretty deeply rooted in me. And I think that's true for a lot of people, wherever they are in their journey. And I know I didn't say this explicitly earlier, but I guess I could say it now too, is that I'm not one of the Christians that thinks everybody should be Christian. I sometimes half jokingly say that I think God called me to be a Christian, but it's sort of not the orthodox thing to say that, well, that's true for everyone, isn't it, right? Like God calls everybody to be Christians, right? It's like, so
Or
I
atheists,
like to...
right?
Yeah, what about the atheists? Does God call the... Yeah, it's a little mind bender. So when I look at... I like the idea of applying a tradition to itself. And honestly, I think that's what Jesus did with Judaism. He sort of, I don't know, in some ways, he was a street epistemologist, I might say, with the Pharisees. And I feel like Christianity is best served when it's kind of applied to itself in some way, so that it doesn't become the point. Like, I don't think that religion is the point of religion. It's more about accessing parts of ourselves that we might not otherwise have access to, or accessing bigger potentials, not just individually, but collectively too. And I see mysticism as the kind of underground stream that goes through all the traditions, different streams, but that's sort of where the real juice is, where it's rooted in some fundamental, some direct experience. And so there's a scripture that says God is no respecter of persons, and I like to sort of apply that to like God is no respecter of religions, God is no respecter of denominations. In other words, I sometimes have this idea like those fundamentalists, like they're gonna learn, one of these days they'll be put in their place or something like that, and it just doesn't work that way, because people can be very kind of have narrow world views and things, and it works totally fine for them, and they have religious experiences, they have spiritual experiences, and so it's not like spirit is saying you have to figure it out first before I will pour out myself on you. It's more like we're going to use whatever we can get. And so if people have their eyes open to the divine, to some higher experience, it's like the universe is generous, and it's like, yeah, you're looking toward us. And I'm sort of creating this like second person, and it's fine if you take that as a metaphor, but it's not just a theoretical thing for me. It's like, this is a practical thing. Like I once read a prayer written by an atheist, and I got to go find that again, because it was the most beautiful prayer I ever read. And maybe it was more of an agnostic, but I think maybe they grew up in a religious context where, they lost their belief in heaven, this comforting thing. But it was such a heart-centered, heart-expressed prayer that I just thought, that is the most beautiful thing. And so Christian mysticism is the underground stream of mysticism that goes through Christianity, and there's various different like the Catholic Church, like there's different orders of I'm the words aren't coming to me now, and I think that's okay, but because I've probably talked long enough. But I hope I did mysticism a justice, even if it wasn't particularly about Christian mysticism. Thanks for letting me talk.
Yeah, thank you, Evan.
Thanks, Evan. I appreciate it.
I just want to say congrats on losing your party hat.
Oh yeah, it's like right after you told me about it, it went away. It's like, okay, I'm here for over a week. It's only been a week. That's the scariest part.
Yeah, welcome to Clubhouse.
Thank you.
Yep. Welcome. All right. So we do have one more. We have a person in the audience that wants to come up. Evan, you're having to hang around. Yeah, so let's welcome Want. Want, stage is yours if you want to go ahead and ask your question or comment.
Hello, Want.
Hey guys. So can you explain quick how this goes? Because from what I've seen here, it's mostly been people coming up to clarify what they've said before, and I'm not sure how to just enter the stage here.
Yeah, sure. So basically what we're talking here is about street epistemology, which is an approach to reasoning and conversing about what we think about the world and how it is and how we would like it to be. Like basically meaningful conversations about the world fall under street epistemology toolset. And here we are discussing it. And if you have any questions about this approach, I will be happy to answer them. So you don't have to refer to anything that's been said before.
So how do you start this process? I see that it's obtain, identify, or obtain informed consent, right?
Yeah,
How do you go
usually
into
it
that
is.
process of like, okay,
Right. Actually, it can go different ways. In short, it depends, because it depends on who you're talking to and in what context. Maybe it's your mother and you're sitting in the kitchen, or maybe it's just a half stranger at a party. So yeah, all that should be taken into account. And what I like to think to myself is, how far do I want to go? Do I already know how far do I want to go? Do I want to understand this person better? Um, do I have time, and do I think they would be also interested in uncovering something? So uh, yeah, so by default you could just think about it in terms of informed consent. So we could start by asking, like, would you? I would be interested discussing this specific topic with you. So would you be willing to do it? And also, I can describe in a couple more sentences what street epistemology entails and what are my current goals. That'd be one way to do it. So to just say it like that. Would you mind me conducting a short interview with you, for example? But also, what I also wanted to say, that it doesn't have to be exactly like this every time, because it depends on the situation. When you are sitting in the kitchen with your mother and you just want to ask her a question, like, for example, she speaks about something, and you can just ask her, for example, why do you think that's the case? And in order to ask one question, we don't. I don't think we have to obtain informed consent all the time, as we do prior to a more deep and meaningful conversation. So it depends.
So, here's my idea of ideological sparring. So, I am not the expert. I talk about ideas. I am taking ideas against other ideas. I am not taking ideas against you. Your ideas are not going to touch me. I am the bearer of the ideas, not the ideas themselves. So, when I am arguing with people, I generally don't go through this whole 7-step process, but rather I try to explain sometimes my relationship with the ideas being espoused, like I am right now.
Right. And your question, I'm guessing, would be how it relates to street epistemology and whether we do it the same or.
Well, I was more looking for, I guess this is a place to critique, right? So
Yeah,
what is your
among
critique?
other
What is your
things.
critique of my approach to competing ideas?
Oh, that's your question. Interesting. Yeah, when you said place for critique, I was thinking more in terms of critique of street epistemology approach. So in order to critique your approach, yeah, I wouldn't think of in terms of critiquing your approach. I would first of all think of understanding it better, what it entails. So you said a couple of sentences, but I wouldn't assume that I understand it now. So I don't think I'm in a place already to not only critique, but even to say something less than that. I heard you, but yeah, I would be interested to know more about it, definitely, especially if it relates to what we're doing, but implies a different kind of approach. At least that was my understanding. You said you present ideas and they are competing against each other. Is that what you said?
I mean, that's not really the best way to explain it. It's juxtaposing ideas together, right?
Ooh, you know what we
So
could do? I could be your interlocutor, and we could do a short conversation using your method, your approach, if you would be interested.
sure.
Really? Oh, okay. Let's ask David and Early then. Would that be okay?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's hope the connections stay firm here.
Yeah, the connection might be the issue, but we can try, right? We can start, and let's hope the connection would sustain itself. All right, so I'm all yours. Let me be your guinea pig, as Evan put it. Yeah.
When I get into these things, generally the point and the counterpoint, or the two counterpoints, I guess, depending on how you want to look at it, are organically defined, right? I'll engage in a conversation with somebody, and one person will take one poll, the other person will take another poll. Polls are always arbitrary, and we take out our ideas associated with those polls and kind of smash them against each other and see what doesn't fall apart, right? So the concept of going about things this way is to see what is strong enough to really go through the ringer, go through the gauntlet, go through the process of testing these ideas, and seeing what doesn't break.
Yeah, that sounds sensible. I think, yeah, I think that's what we're all interested in, in seeing what ideas, what concepts or beliefs, whatever, can go pass through this filter of examining, testing, and whatever else methods we can apply to it. So, yeah, I guess the question would be about how specifically it works, how we do it actually in a conversation. Would you care to show us, or is the connection not stable enough for that?
What I'm picturing here while we wait for the connection is, with Wamp's approach, we're kind of, both parties are kind of going up to the chalkboard, and they're each writing down what their conclusion is, and they're kind of comparing the two conclusions. Whereas, Wamp, please correct me if that's not an accurate assumption. And then with street epistemology, we're both going up to the chalkboard, and the person that is not the street epistemologist is kind of writing their conclusion on the chalkboard, and we're both working as a team, investigating that conclusion, and how the person arrived at that conclusion and investigating that instead. That's kind of what I'm picturing here with this scenario. Do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, to me it sounded similar, but yeah, unfortunately we don't hear it from Word. So, but yeah, speaking to this matter, yes, some approaches to conducting conversations are more asymmetrical, as street epistemology tends to be, at least partially. Some are more like what one been describing, when both parties present their ideas like kind of equally or at the same time maybe, and try to compare what follows from them. Yeah, I've also heard this technique called double cracks. To me it sounded a lot similar to what one been describing, and yeah, I'm sure it can be very beneficial and useful, at least in some conversations for some people. I would be very curious to actually see how it works. So I guess my most important question for one that I would be interested in asking is, can we see examples of such conversations going on somewhere?
Wamp, if you can hear us, sometimes it helps to leave the room and then come back in.
I
So
guess he
maybe.
tried that already.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, I can hear you. To
Oh,
show
great.
an example, so I'm actually trying to work this out now. I've been pretty disappointed with debate format. I don't really like it. I think it's too heavily formalized, and it doesn't allow for like organic argumentation to occur. So I'm trying to actually figure out a format in which we could better see these kinds of ideas, because and this comes down to the way we discuss things. I see all too often around Clubhouse and other communication platforms in which we're discussing ideas. I see ideas presented as a package of many, many, many ideas, all wrapped up together in one, and then you're expected to address the package rather than addressing each point individually. This is what I think is missing from the debate format. This is what I think would be something that is primary to a more organic format, is being able to address things in piecemeal.
Yeah, I see. Have you heard about the double crux technique?
No.
Just from what you're saying, I would guess that you might be interested in. So I guess if you just Google double crux and maybe less wrong,
Double
because it
cracks?
was a post. Yeah, less wrong space double crux or lesswrong.com. You can Google and you will easily find it. There's an article about this technique. But yeah, speaking about this being related to street epistemology, I just want to say that me personally, I think that the rest of us invite you wholeheartedly to try and make some specific suggestions about how we could improve the approach. For example, like instead of this and this that you usually do in SE conversations, you could go for this kind of thing. Maybe share your ideas at some point a bit more or something else, and we would be very genuinely curious to hear that, if that's something that would interest you. I mean,
I hope that we've gotten um, something out of this exchange. I think that I have. Maybe we could, if there are other questions, maybe we can come back to Want in a little bit to see if we can get a better connection.
yeah, I think
Are
that would
there?
be best, because
Yeah,
it's tough to talk with connection that's being broken.
yeah. Are there any other questions for the back channel, or anybody else like to come up on stage?
Yeah, also,
Maybe early. Oh, sorry. Go
I just
ahead.
wanted to say that if no one has any questions, some feedback would also be
There are
appreciated, at
no
least from my
questions
side.
right now, David. No action questions.
Maybe we can do a quick reset early, and then maybe that will prompt some. I've got a whole list of questions that I that I can ask Rom in
Well,
the
go ahead then.
meantime also. Uh, so yeah, you want to go ahead and just do a quick reset early, and then I'll ask a couple of questions to Rom, and you guys too, Alfonso, early. Feel free to ask questions also.
Okay. What did you mean by reset, by the way? How does it
Okay,
work?
my audio's back. A room reset is just kind of reestablishing the format of the room, and as a way to kind of tell the people what we're doing, what we're at.
Oh,
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
one thing that we've learned in doing these rooms is we need to be aware of the nature of Clubhouse and how, it's kind of a revolving room. So you will have people come in and out, new people join very often. So we're trying to be more aware of that and kind of cater to that sort of environment. So it's good to kind of just let everybody know what we're doing here in case they just join the room. So that's
Yeah.
that's kind of what we mean.
Yeah. So so welcome everyone to the SE 101 room in the Street Epistemology Club. This is a room for creating street epistemologists. We are currently taking questions from people in the audience who are interested in learning about street epistemology. And today we have Roman, or Rom, on stage to help you answer your questions. So if you're interested, please raise your hands, and we'll bring you up on stage. We're currently taking questions one at a time. So once your question has been answered, we just ask that you bring yourself back to the audience. If you do not want to come on stage, you can also send me a back channel message and I'll ask the question on your behalf. This room has been created as a learning environment and it's also being recorded. So with that, that's the room. David, if you want to go ahead.
Thanks, Early. So one of the questions that came up for me just in this room with you, Rom, was you said that you were more of a Bayesian thinker, and one of the descriptions of that I got from you was when you're not 0% or nor 100% confident about anything. Can you expand on that maybe? There's a lot of description of what Bayesian thinking is that I've heard, and I was wondering if you could maybe share more about that.
Yeah, sure. So just to be clear, this is more maybe a bit more deeper philosophy, and it's not strictly related to street epistemology anyway. But I just find it helpful for myself. So yeah, there is this thing called Bayes theorem or Bayes rule, which is a simple formula about how to calculate conditional probability. Or conditional meaning that, for example, we had some prior probability about something and some new information arrives, and then we need to naturally we need to update our probability, and how we do it is being dictated by this specific formula. It's pretty simple, and well, if not so simple actually. I shouldn't say that. Some people find it difficult to understand, but in the essence, there's nothing debatable about it. It's just a formula, and so it means that if we have some confidence about anything, and even if we are somewhere off, but when we get new evidence, so when we get new information about this specific belief or claim, let's say, if we are smart, if we are trying to be the most rational thinkers we possibly can, we should be updating our confidence level. And how we should be updating it is being dictated by this formula. Of course, it's difficult and maybe even not necessary, definitely, to actually apply this formula every time you get a new piece of information. It would be probably not possible to do, but at least in theory, it is possible. The stronger the new piece of evidence is, the more influential it would be on our confidence shift. And yeah, that's how it goes. And so how it relates for me to street epistemology is that I'm thinking about whatever I believe in as something that I have some level of confidence in, which is always between 0 and 100. And here also some nuance should be talked about, maybe, because it's mostly about it's only about epistemological claims. It's about claims that relate to the outside world, let's say. So it's not about our feelings, right? I'm not thinking that I'm 90% confident that I love my wife, for example. I'm not using it in this way. It should only be applied to, let's say, empirically verified aspects of our life. So about the physical universe. But there, it's very useful. I think this manner of thinking, and I'm asking myself, as I previously said, that questions like what new evidence could shift my confidence, could increase my confidence, what new evidence would decrease my confidence, and also to what degree, depending on the strength of this evidence. And yeah, it just might help a little bit philosophically. I don't know, but you don't have to use it. It's just how I tend to think about it.
It's another tool that you're using to kind of analyze it,
Yeah.
and yeah, gotcha. Um, I, there's been some talk in the community, the SE community, about getting data on SE's effectiveness. I was wondering if you could maybe talk about that. What would that data look like, and how would that data be collected and interpreted and applied?
Ooh, that's a great question, actually. Yeah. On one hand, we are very hopeful that we will get actual data from studies that study specifically street epistemology and not some related stuff that is already currently available. But actually, how to design such a study is not an easy question, because street epistemology has different aspects, and like any other kind of conversational approach, it can influence a lot of things, a lot of factors could be looked for. So I can imagine very like many different studies that study street epistemology, and they might look for different criteria. Because let me give an example. We could study the influence of SE conversations on the actual confidence of people. Like, for example, we take a bunch of people who believe in something. I don't know, let's say we take 100 atheists and 100 religious people, and we let them talk to expert street epistemologists. Like, for example, with each of them, an SEer conducts a, let's say, 20-minute conversation, right? And then we can see whether there has been some shift in confidence made, and what shift would it be, and whether it stays long term, not only short term. So things like that could be measured, but that's just one factor. And actually, we in street epistemology we don't usually say that you have to change someone's confidence in order for a conversation to be successful, because maybe it was already there where it should have been. One way to look at it, but also there are other aspects, like, for example, we apply street epistemology not only for adjusting levels of confidence, but also to connect with people. Let's say to I don't know, make to learn how to conduct more meaningful conversations, to have more fun doing it. Let's say, right? And so maybe another study could be conducted that would measure how much people like talking about epistemological stuff if street epistemology is being applied. That would be another thing I can think of, and I'm sure there can be lots of, maybe not lots, but some other aspects that could and probably should be measured about it. But it's tough. Yeah, I'm not a psychologist who has been designing a study on street epistemology, so I'm not. Yeah, I don't feel myself an expert talking about it. But yeah,
Okay.
it is very important.
Yeah, because it seems like it would be beneficial for people that are interested, um, being able to show that the effectiveness of it. And I was just curious you know, what that would actually look like.
Oh,
Um,
wait, I just thought of another thing that we should measure when measuring street epistemology, that might even be probably even much more important than the first one that I mentioned. I would like to know how street epistemology influences critical thinking levels. And critical thinking is something that could and should be measured separately from any conversational approaches, right? So that's actually another question how to measure critical thinking. But some people are working on that and have been working on it for some time, and yeah, hopefully they will. Well, there are already some tools that measure it, but yeah, I'm hopeful that even better tools will arrive in the near future. But yeah, I would be very curious to know how applying street epistemology influences critical thinking levels of people who are applying it and of people who it has been applied on. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna leave it a mystery from of who the person that told me this. It was somebody else in the community,
All right.
and yeah, they said I, the question was about, can a Christian use street epistemology? And obviously, or at least I'm pretty confident that they can. But the comment that was made was that they were not too worried about it because the longer that they use street epistemology, the more likely that they will abandon those beliefs as well. Basically, because of the use of it and the way that you go about questioning it and examining the sufficiency of the reasons that people use to arrive at conclusions. So basically, the idea was, a Christian is going to eventually abandon those beliefs the more that they use street epistemology. I was wondering if I could pick your brain about that. What do you think about that?
I have no idea. I would actually, yeah, this is another idea for a study, right? Let a lot of Christians, a lot of atheists, a lot of I don't know, pick a belief and pick two sides of this belief, and let people use street epistemology or learn street epistemology and use it, and then we might look at whether it influences their beliefs and whether it has a more like a one-sided effect or not. So yeah, I have no idea. But I definitely invite people holding any kinds of beliefs to learn and use street epistemology, because I just think it's a tool that can and should be used by anyone and on any kinds of beliefs about the world. But yeah, I just don't know what would happen, whether
Yeah,
it
it seems
will
like.
actually. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, it just seems like that might be another way to measure the effectiveness if the person that's engaging in street epistemology conversations, um, you know, they're themselves adjusting their beliefs based on the approach that they're actually using on with other people. So,
Yeah.
I
um, go ahead.
I have a question for anyone who practices SC in the room, speakers and listeners. How much of what part does learning more about different belief systems or understanding, religions or philosophies come into play in your interactions? And I ask this question because I find myself sometimes just getting lost in hearing the stories and not properly trying to get to a level of confidence or actually critical thinking, but actually just being fascinated and being very happy to to learn and kind of journey. I always talk about myself when doing SE or when just talking to someone who thinks differently, perhaps, as journeying with them, taking a journey with them. So the question is, who else has this kind of experience of, I just really want to know more about you and your beliefs and your thoughts and your ideas, philosophy.
First, I want to understand the question. I want to make sure that I understand the question. So you're asking, when we use street epistemology, do we make it a journey for ourselves, or does it feel like a journey that we undertake? And also,
No,
how does philosophy and other?
No, it
Go
would
ahead.
be, do you ever feel like you just don't want to question or
Oh, you mean
think
whether we
critically?
agree with?
No, not at all. You meet
Okay.
someone whose belief is so fascinating and interesting that you're like, I'm more interested in learning about you and your beliefs than actually, thinking critically about them.
Oh,
Do you ever
right.
derail yourself?
Right. So now that I understand the question, it's about whether it happens that you have a conversation with a person who you find so interesting that you don't even think about challenging them. You just want to understand them better, to know them better, and to make it naturally flow instead of epistemologically challenging them. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Yeah. So my answer would be, well, two parts of me want to answer give different answers. One would be to say that yes, definitely there has been there are such cool people that you just want to talk to and not even think about their epistemology like too deeply, because I don't know, maybe because it just comes so naturally that you have a general feeling and understanding that their epistemology is on a very high level and there is not much that you want or can challenge here, and you just want to learn from them. So that's one answer that I could give. But also, I would say that maybe it's a good idea not to distinguish between whether I want to actually challenge them epistemologically or not challenge them. I think this challenging part should probably be a natural part of a conversation. It might feel like a challenge, it might not feel like a challenge. It's okay both ways as long as we have a meaningful conversation and discuss whatever we want to discuss and think deeper into our beliefs. Like, for example, I might ask questions that could be most challenging for one person, but for another person, they would be easy, obvious questions. And it happens all the time, I think. So I'm not sure whether I've answered your question, but yeah, there are cool people out there that you just want to listen to. And learn from them.
And the reason I say this is because it happens to me all the time, and it's not like I feel like they're gods of epistemology and they have everything figured out. It's just because every person I meet has a different nuance, right? And I mean, a lot of the times, especially people who come and approach me, perhaps in the atheism club, right? Because they have a, you have your average Joe who'll be like, bring up your usual arguments of the watchmaker or whatever. But then you have people, I think like Evan, we had a gorgeous room this week, and that kind of drifted, right? We used to have these intense blood sporty rooms, and I kind of got bored of that. I started to really appreciate getting to know a few, some of the people's journeys, some of their takes on things, because it's not, everyone doesn't fit the same mold, and some people are more special than others, because you really see them with with fascinating ideas on how science matches spirituality or stuff like that, or so that was kind of my experience, experience I wanted to share.
Yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really like that, Alfonso. I think that speaks to your sincerity in just having conversations with people. That's great. I find myself getting distracted a lot whenever I'm letting somebody just t talk about their journey and share their thoughts. And there is a byproduct to that, I think, that is beneficial. A lot of times when people bring up certain conclusions that they have, depending on what it is, uh, sometimes they're not listened to very much, because of our tendency to kind of dismiss them, and so I think that sometimes letting them share what they want to share could be the first time that they've ever said that stuff out loud. And we've talked about this before, where it requires a different part of the brain to listen to yourself when you're talking out loud versus hearing what you say inside your head. It always sounds like or very often it sounds like it makes perfect sense when you're saying it inside your head, but as soon as you say it out loud, it may not exactly reflect what you really mean. So that allows them to possibly think more deeply about what they think they believe, and I think that can be very very beneficial. Um, and speaking of distractions, one of the ideas in a good street epistemology conversation is respecting the other person's time. And just wanted to let you guys know we've been on for about 2 hours. I'm probably going to have to get going here pretty soon, and I just wanted to allow Rom to have an off ramp if you need. I just want to do a check in with you, Rom, make sure you're okay on time, basically. Um, so if there's any other last minute questions before we end the room, now is the time to go ahead and ask them. Come up on stage, and we'll try to wrap it up here pretty soon. Are you doing okay? And also early, Alfonso, I'm just doing a check-in with you folks just to make sure we're all okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, David. It's very important to do such check-ins, and yeah, now that you said it, I understand that two hours have passed, and my experience tells me that usually I'm more productive in 2 hour bursts. So yeah, I would also be glad to take a rest in some near future. I could stay for 10 or 15 more minutes, but probably not much more than that.
Yeah, these sometimes go by really really fast. Before we know it, it's tomorrow. So
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, thanks for sticking around.
Yeah, I can stay still. Um, I'm walking my dogs, multitasking like usual. I just wanted to add a short thing to what you said, David. Sometimes when I'm speaking, it's not only that I'm it's a different way of thinking than when I'm not saying my thoughts out loud. Sometimes when I'm speaking, I'm actually figuring stuff out. I don't know if you've experienced that.
Yeah, totally. Like on the fly, you're like building the ship while you're sailing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome to the stage, Mike. How's it going? Good to see you again.
Good, buddy. How are you?
Too
Hello,
shabby.
Mike.
Dude, I'm like hesitant to even come up here because I feel like I'm kind of getting annoying now, but
No, not at all.
Not at
We've
all.
been waiting for the next questioner,
nah,
so
bro, I've never
have at
met
it,
you. You
please.
don't know. There's a lot
Hey,
of
no.
baggage
So
to this guy right here.
real quick, Mike. My experience so far has been that when you come up, when Scully comes up, usually the audience attendance spikes at some point. At least it has been the last few times. I personally enjoy having you on stage and hearing the challenges that you put forward. So that is my
I
statement taken
appreciate
into
that.
account all of our interactions. Yeah, so for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It makes me feel a little better. I don't want to disrupt the flow or anything like that. But
This is why we have this room, is so that
all right.
we can address all this stuff.
Well, okay. My question was basically based off. It really has nothing to do with street epistemology. It basically has something to do with our interaction, David, you and I, last week when I asked you, like, what was the motivation behind questions, and you basically said to define the truth. You remember saying something like that?
No, what I said was I gave you the Matt Dillahuntian response, trying to put that in your framework there, but also to have good reasons for arriving at the conclusions that I come to. I'm not really interested in defining truth per se, but more about um, having solid reasons for concluding things. Does that
No. So
help?
it totally does. But do you remember responding to me at least in that way? Because if that's what you meant, like I was asking you, and I was asking you like, okay, so you're asking random people a series of questions, and then from that you're going to determine the truth. That was actually the follow up last week. Do you remember that interaction at all?
Um, I believe so, yeah, and that's from what I remember what my answer was. And also, and we were talking about this earlier in this room, is it's not like, we're going around and forcing people to examine their beliefs. It's we have to have that consent, and that's really important.
Yeah, I get that. I think the consent thing is neither here nor there, based off of the motivation. But I don't want to go down. I mean, the consent matters. You can't force somebody to answer a question anyways. So that kind of like a non sequitur. Hey, answer my question, or else. It's like, or else what? Fuck off. I'm gonna walk away. So
Right, totally,
they don't.
totally.
Yeah, they don't. To say that is kind of like, okay, that's, to me it's obvious. What I was basically thinking about when I stepped away was like, wow, if you're asking questions to determine the truth, it assumes that the truth can be determined, which when it comes to things like theology, it would be begging the question, because we might not have access to determine what truth is, or not what truth is, what the truth is, whether or not there's actually a truth explanation, and so on. So to assume that if going into it with that motivation from the get-go, it assumes that that is possible, when in some cases when we talk about theology, there's no reason to believe that such thing is possible, at least in this at this time. So would
Yeah,
you agree that go ahead.
yeah, no, I was just going to offer a clarification. Yeah, I'm not sure that the capital T truth is even accessible. What I'm interested in is getting as close to it as we can. And if I'm having an interaction with somebody and they're giving me good reasons for, arriving at a conclusion, I want to know what those are so that I can apply them, because that's what I'm interested in, is getting as close to that truth as we can. I don't. I'm not convinced that it's accessible based on our experiences and biases and basically our perceptions. Does that clarify that?
It totally does, but to me, it's like to say to get as close as we can. When it comes to certain things, I get it. Right? In certain cases, we can try to get as close as we can, like the laws of logic and so on. Then we step into the conversation of suppositions and so on. But when it comes to like, conversations about theology, how do you know what the closest is? Like
That
maybe like we're go ahead.
that's street epistemology. How do we know?
Well, that's what I'm saying. So to determine that, you might not even be talking about something that is even relevant. There might be nothing to get close to, right? And so to talk to somebody about their belief, you think that by doing so, you can realize how close you are to a truth or whatever we want to call it, position?
I think that we can examine the sufficiency of the reasons that they're using, and
Yeah,
if we can test it, because this is scientific. We're testing stuff.
yeah,
Um, and I think that is a reliable way to find out if something is likely true or not true. So, talking to people and examining the sufficiency of the reasons that they're using and
yeah.
the reliability of the methods they're using, um, that can help me also understand the reasons that I'm using and whether those reasons are reliable or not.
I get it. So again, I don't want to, like I said, disrupt the flow because there's so much said here, and like I have so much to respond to. But I think I asked the major part of my question. But yeah, it's interesting conversation. So thank you.
Yeah,
I want to.
let's do a one-on-one, Mike, sometime.
Uh,
Let's because
yeah, I'm definitely down.
you're a straight shooter. I love that about you. You want answers, and you don't want questions to your questions. And I'm happy to answer your questions as directly as possible. And I think that I can do that. And so we should get together sometime.
I appreciate it, brother. Anytime. So thank you guys.
Thanks, Mike. I have
Hmm.
there's a raised hand. I don't know if you're trying
Can
to.
I can I speak to what Mike brought up a little bit too?
Okay, yes,
Is it?
you must.
I mean, no, I don't.
No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
I don't have to. But yeah, sure. Just briefly, I wanted to support a little bit what Mark said. I also think that it's totally a valid question if someone says, I want to know the truth. But then what do you mean by truth? Or even if you say, I want to get closer to the truth, well, closer to what? And how do you know whether you're getting closer or not? And maybe in some aspects, it's tough to say in the first place whether there is some measurement to make about to understand whether we are getting closer to the truth or not, actually. Uh, so yeah, I want to just recap briefly the idea from earlier today, and actually it's not only from earlier today. Just this week we've been working on a module about either what is street epistemology or why to do street epistemology in the course that we're writing now, and this is exactly what we've been discussing there when we were talking about truth versus confidence assessing. And yeah, so I just want to say that I think that it's useful it could be productive to use words like truth and other related words if both parties are okay with it and if they don't ask if they are using them, I don't know, like in simpler meaning, not like something absolute or something like truth with a capital letter T, right? But if such a question arises, like what do you mean by truth, I totally also support just dropping this term and thinking like, what do we mean and what are we actually doing here? What are our goals? And so instead of saying whether we're getting closer to truth, I would consider questions like, what are we feeling about it? And what are we trying to achieve in this conversation? And is there something like what is this belief specifically helping us set some expectations, like what we expect to see or not to see? Is there something to be measured at all? If yes, then what? Let's do it. If no, then okay, it's totally fine too. Let's reassess what we're talking about. Maybe we're talking about our feelings. Maybe we're talking about something else. So yeah, I just wanted to quickly support Mike's concern because I also have it.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah, it's crucial for both parties to have an understanding of definitions. Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
I wanted to chime. Can you hear me properly?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, thanks. I wanted to address the comment on consent. So the fact that you're talking to someone, you say, okay, yeah, that person is consenting to speak to me. But I think when you get into an SC interaction, it can be a very powerful tool. And I mean, most of the well-known people who practice street epistemology, they're very intelligent people. They're people who are listening intently and engaging genuinely with people. And so Reed isn't here anymore, but I saw an interaction with him. I like to call him Poker Face because he doesn't really laugh or react. He's just very, and I think most of us who know him or know about him know that he's kind of into poker. So it's an interesting thing to see because there was one particular interaction that he had with a young woman in university somewhere in California, I believe, who was a Muslim, and my perception that she was a little bit entranced by his cool and his calm and him asking these questions, and she could get a little bit uncomfortable. So my point with this is, I think with great power comes great responsibility sometimes. So I think when you have someone engaging in an NSC conversation, I don't want to say you're going into a hypnotic trance, but you do create rapport. You do touch into parts that are very, very sensitive in a person's mind and belief systems. So I think it is essential to check in, because you could like be entranced in your own journey and in like, I'm asking the right questions and whatever, but not realize that the other person is coming out of their comfort zone and maybe not in the right frame of mind anymore. And if you give them the chance, like like right now asking Roman, do you want to, it's been 2 hours or whatever, for whatever reason, and to check with them and say, are you comfortable? Do you have time? Do you have any other engagements? Are you happy to continue talking? Just to, it doesn't have to be consent. I think it just has to do with knowing that the other person is comfortable and in a good place to continue speaking.
Yeah, that's great. I think that's a good place to end here. I want to thank Rom again for coming back. It's been another great room. Feel free to come back and join the panel anytime you'd like. We're going to hopefully do this room again next week. Not sure who the guest is. I'm working on it. So Early, thanks so much again for facilitating. Always a pleasure, Alfonso. Thanks for being here. Thanks for everyone that joined the conversation and listened in. Any last thoughts, Rom or Early, Alfonso, before we?
I just wanted to say thanks for having me, and I was glad to be here today. I really enjoyed both the questions and the SE conversation that we had with Ivan. So yeah, all good stuff, and keep up the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Roman and David. Always, thank you so much for these rooms. I value them and I appreciate them a lot. Thank you.
Okay, I'll go now, and yeah, go ahead, Early. I'll listen to you first.
No, and it's okay. I was just going to say thank you again for participating, and it was a pleasure having you on here.
Awesome. Then see you next time, guys. Bye.
And there you have it. If you're interested in joining the conversation and asking questions, or just listening in, you can find us on Clubhouse in the Street Epistemology Club on Saturday afternoons, US. Until next time, keep asking questions.